Yo, welcome back. Sober experience. You know the deal. Yep. That shit is hard right there. I want to thank you all for subscribing, sharing, being with us on this ride. All the warm wishes from my wife did not go unnoticed. We still in the fight, trying to hold our heads high. We love you all. Happy birthday, Aunt Carol. Sorry I couldn't make it today. I love you so much. Yeah, welcome back. Sober Experience. Again, share, subscribe on all podcast platforms. You guys know who I am. You guys know the deal. Thank you for tuning in. It's your brother. We've had a freaking eventful freaking March. You know, Jesus, talking about going in like a lion, right? In like a lion. It's been crazy, bro. Crazy, as you guys know. We'll put the step work down just for maybe another week or so till we're so I can keep everybody, so I can be honest and be like, dog, this is what's going on Earth. You know what I mean? In my stratosphere. Yeah. So last we spoke, what was going on? I just I spent 10 hours in the jail, which was wiggity whack. It sucked, but it wasn't the worst, but it just sucked. Whatever. I don't even like to make a... Part of me almost wants to make a deal out of it. It wasn't... It was... Listen, I don't want to go back. That's as big of a deal as I'm making, and that's that. And people asking me, what it was like. Because, who as an adult likes to lose their freedom for fucking 10 hours? It was funny. Was the other thing I forgot to share about, and then I'll get into this week's activities. When I was in the hospital with my wife, because she had that lupus flare-up that basically was like a stroke. Yeah. And, so we have a little bit more confirmation of that. So, entonces... yeah. It was a lot. And one of the magical things that happened, because I was just going through it and just trying to be there for her and as best as I know how, without being crazy about it. So I go into the waiting room. I forgot about this part. And it was important, so I wanted to say it. So here we are. Anyway, I go into this waiting room. There's an old man there. And there's this, lady. Yeah, just a regular all-American white lady. Looking however she looks in your mind, that's how she looks. Middle-aged. I mean, I'm 40. I'm soon to be 46 this coming week. Happy birthday to me. But maybe she was around my age, or a couple years older. I'm at that age where You go into the hospital and these motherfuckers are all younger than you. And I'll get into that in a minute because I had to get a little stupid with one of these people. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. I got to get my drink. Stand by. I love you. Stand by. Listen to this while I step away. And just like that, I'm back with the Poison, not a sponsor, Monster Zero Sugar Energy. This is like the original Monster, like the black can that I love the flavor, but it always had 7,000 grams of sugar. This has no sugar, same flavor. So let me take a Slurpee so I can go on my rant. All right, so here's what happens, right? I'm there with this lady, and I see her, and she's crying. And really, what do? I have like a moment where I'm like, should I mind my fucking business? No. So I ask her, I say, are you okay? Are you okay? And she says to me, she's like, I just lost my husband. And I was like, oh, man. I told her I was sorry. And then I walked across the room to sit across from her, just to be like, I look at these situations, these life situations. I don't want nobody to be sad on their own. I don't want anybody to like if somebody got hit by a car, like there's always somebody there to be with them, hopefully. Yeah, you don't want somebody to die on their own or to be sad on their own or to be sick on their own. It's fucking whack. Anyway, so I just go and I sit across from her. And we start having the conversation. She's asking me. First, I don't even let her ask me about, I don't even remember how the whole thing went, to be honest. It was a super spiritual experience. She started talking to me about that her husband is with, JC. Capital Jesus Christ. He's with the Lord now. She's like, he lived a good life, but the Lord called him and this and that. And I'm like, whew, okay. That means I could talk about God. And that's something that I love to talk about because God is everything to me. And I said, I understand completely. I said, this is just how, I'm here with you. And that's what I said. I said, I'm with you. I'm here with you. I'm here with you. And she was grateful and she was crying, like tearing up but crying, but like, so she starts telling me her story. And her story was, she was from like the Boston area. And her husband was a retired firefighter, apparently. R.I.P. to him, whatever his name was. I like to be anonymous in the street in these situations, similar to the track worker that helped save my fucking wife's, I shouldn't say my fucking wife, the track worker that saved my wife's life. Shout out to him. So, I'm just there and I'm listening. She's like, yeah, my husband was a firefighter. He was a Marine, tough guy, big guy, tough guy. I'm like, yeah, I get it. And she's like, he went and he got, after he retired from the fire department, he went and he got like this weight loss surgery. She didn't say which one it was, but it was whatever one it was. And I'm just like listening. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then she starts telling me about all the complications that he started having. That like he started losing weight, rapidly, and they think it's the thing, but something's wrong. There's a side effect. There's a complication with the surgery, right? And yeah, that something happened where his body was no longer accepting the nutrients from the food he was eating. This is what she said. And she said he lost like 100 pounds in like 3 months. And I'm like doing the math because she told me he was like 145 pounds when he died, or 100, yeah, whatever, 145, whatever it was. But he lost over 100 pounds when he passed away. So I'm doing like, wow, he was like 245. Let's be generous and say 260, right? And goes and gets this surgery. I don't know how big he was. I don't know whatever, but I'm like 260 is not that bad to be getting a surgery. But I'm like, whatever. I'm not judging, but I'm just listening. And she's like, yeah. And she says, this actually happens more than people think, where they have complications with this surgery that they can't go fix. And he basically, I don't know what the right term is, but he wasn't getting nutrients from the food. He lost over 100 pounds. He was down to 145, skin and bones. He ended up getting pneumonia because he couldn't fight off any diseases. None of that. His body was rejecting everything. And they came to New York City because this is where the good doctors are and whatever, and they couldn't save him. And he just died. And, yeah, like he just died a couple minutes before I got there. And we started talking about God. And I was like, God sent an angel. That's what I choose to believe. In the form of a human, meaning an angel in spirit. Somebody who believes in good. Somebody who believes in love and who believes in what's right. And that's the guy that saved my wife. Not some freaking creep. I was so scared of that. And she was in that subway by herself, allegedly, not by herself, but in her mind by herself. And she was defenseless. And she was losing consciousness. And this track worker anonymously came with his orange vest or yellow vest. And he stayed with, and he didn't take advantage of her. He didn't try to grope her. He didn't try to attack her. He didn't try to touch her. He didn't try to go in her wallet. He didn't just walk by. He sat her down on the stairs. And then just kept calling 911 until the ambulance came. Man, I think about that. That could have went in so many other ways. Yeah, it's scary, man. And because it's all on the menu, the good and the bad. So when I explained to her about this guy who saved my wife, she's like, that's the kind of man like my husband was. He was a Marine. He served this country. And he was a firefighter and all this stuff. And he just retired. He wasn't, when I mean like he must have, I don't even think the guy was 50. I didn't ask how old he was. Maybe he was 50. Maybe. Yeah, we started to talk about just God. And I'm like, yo, like that track worker, that guy. I said, your husband was that guy to 200,000 people in his lifetime that he lived a life of service. Obviously first to this country, and then when he became a firefighter, this guy was touching people's lives. And it made me feel good. And it made me feel good that I could share that perspective with her. They're like, dude, this guy, he was everything. He was exactly who God wants us to be. I don't know why God took him or whatever. I don't even get into that. And she was talking about, the same kind of cliche stuff, which is fine, which is, God takes his best or whatever. I don't know why. I know that he must have been suffering. And if there was no way humanly possible to help him, I know God doesn't want any of us to suffer to that degree. And she was like welling up. Like a little heavy-set, chunky lady. She looked like she could have been either like somebody who worked when you go into your kid's school, you go into the main office. Like an unassuming, white, middle-aged, chubby lady with glasses there with her dad. Her dad was older, and he was like saying, yup, Jesus, like, the other stuff, and just like consoling her. And she was crying, and she was looking at me, and I was looking at her. And she's like, I'm so happy your wife is okay, that she made it, that nothing bad happened. And I was like, yeah. I said, just said, thank you. And then I asked if I could give her a hug. And she got right up. And she came, and I hugged her, and I held this lady. And it felt good. And I walked off. I didn't have to tell her name. I didn't have to ask her name. I didn't need to tell her my name. I'm another one of God's children. And that's who I want to be. That's who I've grown to be. And that's what I think my purpose is. And that was like an impactful moment. I even shared it with my wife. Not that whole story, but just like, I just met this lady who just lost her husband. Because like you're thinking all these things, Yeah, you're thinking all these things. Anyway, fast forward, obviously. Then last weekend happens, whatever. I'm like, we're like reeling. We're not, listen, it's not standing 8 count yet, but we're on the defense right now. We're ordering, we're following up with doctors, we're doing all this shit. You know what I'm saying? My wife is home, she's recovering, she's walking with the walker, and then she's walking without the walker. She's starting to feel a little good. She's having a couple of moments, frustrated moments with herself, but it's evolving at the right. I don't know. I don't know what pace it's supposed to evolve at, but we're going in the right direction. And then we go Monday. She's like, I got to go to the fucking cardiologist. I don't want to go. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, no. I said, look, I made myself available. Let's just go. I give her a little nudge. She's like, okay. And then we go, and he's going to do like whatever he's going to do. They put the camera through one of your veins to check all your shit. Now, my wife has lupus. She's had a little bit of high cholesterol apparently for a while. The lupus flare-up increases that kind of stuff, whatever. And it's going to be like 3 hours. And she wanted to leave before that because we were in the hospital, and there's a lot of people in the waiting room. She's like, this is like crazy. It's like almost like maybe I'm overreacting. I was like, no, let's just stay. We're already here. It's funny because when you're in a waiting room in a hospital, and I don't mind, whatever, but it's like, it's you could have like a sitcom in there, a sitcom in the cardiac unit waiting room. You got people, they're having heart problems, which means they're probably having health problems, which means they're having life problems. And you're hearing about all this other stuff going on peripherally. Now, I'm like trying to mind my business, but like my left ear understands Spanish. My right ear is listening to motherfucking Rogan, right? And my thing. So I talk to my wife. I'm like, you hear these people talking, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. She's like, yeah. She's like, I try not to pay attention, but like, we're like listening. Because I look like a pasty white human, and my wife looks like, what a Egyptian or Latin goddess. My wife is not Egyptian, but what a goddess would look like if she hadn't been in the sun for about 6 months. So you can look and be like, there's no way that girl's fucking white. You know, she's the butter pecan Rican from the South Boogie. But, you know, yeah, anyway, so we're listening. Doing our little bochinche stuff. Then finally they call her. They're like, oh, this is going to be a couple hours. I'm like, all right, I go to the car. I'm in the car like maybe 1 hour, and I'm just like relaxing. I was going to take a little nap, and I'm finishing the rest of my Rogan episode. And, bro, I get a call from the hospital, and I'm thinking it's her. And it's this Indian doctor, and he's like just talking like mumbling. Like, not mumbling. He's talking in like medical terms, but it just sounds like mumbling to me because I don't understand what he's saying. I said, he's like, oh, your wife has this, blah, 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 and we have to, you know, we have to do this other test, and we have to do this, and like, I said, my friend, where the fuck is my wife? Why are you calling me? Like, where's my wife? She's like, oh, she's just coming out of the surgery, out of the place. I had to stop the angiogram because she had 80% blockage on her main artery. She cannot leave the hospital. She's at risk of having a heart attack. I was like, what? I was like, all right, I said, listen, I'm going to be there. And I said, he says, he doesn't know that I'm close. I was like, dog, I'm not sending my wife to one of these appointments on her own. Here's what I'm thinking about. I was like, listen, I'll be there in like 5 minutes. I said, I'm parked right up the street. I go down there, boom, I bust in like, you know, one of these episodes of like ER or one of these other places. I find my wife. The guy's there. He's like, look, you know, and he was a beautiful guy, you know. He's like kind of cracking jokes, which was pissing me off because I was a little bit in distress. It's like, what do you mean my wife is going to have a heart attack? He's like, no. He says, here's the deal. You know, she has 80% blockage in, you know, in the vein that goes from the artery that goes from the main aorta back to the heart. Apparently there's like 4 of those veins, but the main one that goes back to the heart is at 80%, and the other 2 or 3 or whatever is at 70%. He's like, listen, she can't leave. We have 3 options: surgery, or surgery. That's it. You know, and because of her lupus, we can't put a stent in there, nothing. We have to do a bypass or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, this guy's serious right now, you know? And my wife is like she's just coming out of the whatever, and she's a little bit, you know, loopy. But apparently while he was putting the camera up there, he discovered the blockages because her heart stopped, the blood stopped flowing in her heart. And I was like, holy shit, you know? Anyway. So, yeah, that's where we are. You know, they admit her, and then they start running all these tests and all this stuff. And, you know, she's staying in the ICU. And, you know, I think it's like, I wasn't prepared. Obviously, nobody's prepared. But I was grateful. I was like, boo, she's in the hospital. If she was in the street, he's like, listen, if we don't know when a heart attack could have came, it could have came in 3 weeks, it could have came in 3 months. But if it happens on this one where it's very bad, whatever, he's like, listen, fatality. Like, he was just being straight up. He's like, no way, she wouldn't have made it. If she was in the house, she was anywhere, it's over. You know? And I was just like, oh my God. It's like, how many angels, how many chances are we going to get? You know? So yeah, she's staying there. And, you know, it's frustrating. They're doing all these tests. They're doing more diagnostic tests. I have to be honest. I only got into one. And now we're still barely, like, myself, my kids, my sister-in-law, my mom, like, we're like barely recovering from the first thing. And then we have this other thing. So in the midst of all that same night, she fires off like I guess she had a breaking point, right? And like I left the hospital because now I can't even stay there all the time. I have to leave at 9. I left the hospital, come back to the shop, so that way I can prep stuff to be done for the next day, so I don't have to be at work. Because this is one of the reasons why I build the life that I have. So that way, if I have to take off time or if I have to do something, the money doesn't stop. It's nice. But, you know, we earned it. We put in the work. We have the people. We do the thing. And that's it. I'm grateful for that. So I get here and, like, she had a moment of frustration and she fired off a crazy fucking text to me. You know, because while I was there with her, I guess I was saying some shit that was foul. You know, which is true. I mean, it's not true. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. She's like, you keep making comments. Basically, she was saying, and this is true, that I was making comments about what she eats, how she eats, the way she eats, and this and that. And some of that is, I don't know how valid it is in this particular scenario, but I know that it doesn't help, you know. But who the fuck am I, you know? And she's like, dude, basically saying, like, you need to shut the fuck up. None of that shit is helpful. You throwing things at me about my fucking chuletas and my rice and all, whatever. Like, that's not, you know what I'm saying? Basically, she's saying, like, yo, you're kicking me while I'm down, you fucking weenie. And I wasn't having a good day. So I, in the moment, got King Baby defensive, and I fired some shit back at her. Blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, with all the self-righteousness and stupidity and ego and just like humanity, right? We've had again, she had basically a stroke in the train, and then, you know, I had to go, you know, whatever, sit down for a day, and like all these is emotionally charged things. So like, it came out on this day. And, yeah, it was whack. Arguing is not helpful. Either way, like, what did I have to do in that time in order to keep on? You know, because now I'm still doing my life stuff. I'm trying to be there for her while I have an angry wife. And I don't know about you guys, but when my wife gets mad at me, it's not all the time. Once every months, 6-8 months will go by, but we don't even have no argument. But like, if she gets mad about something, she'll hold on for like 2 days, bro, like 2-3 days. That's why it's not that I don't stand up for myself. It's like I weigh out the option. Like, I don't want to spend fucking 3 days not talking to my wife in a very, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't want to. My life is way more important than 3 days out in the cold. There has to be some very bad hills that I would have to die on. You know what I'm saying? In order to risk that. Because like, I don't want to be like that. Anyway, so I'm like 2-3 days out in the cold while she's going through this. And yeah, it sucks, man. But what did I had to do the work. I had to call my sponsor, and I go through all this shit with Yariv, right? And what do I come out with? Like, yeah, of course. What I said was, number one, I was wrong. Number two, it wasn't helpful. You know? And that's it. I was wrong and it wasn't helpful. And you know what? Guess what? He was just reminding me, I need to just show up and be loving. That's it. Guess what? Let's just say, in theory, and this is not the case, but if my wife wanted to eat, you know, ring dings for the rest of her life, brother, that's her fucking prerogative. I can't be the ring ding fucking sheriff. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to spend my life doing that? I'm going to be hurt watching it, maybe a little bit, whatever. But my perspective is, how am I going to spend my emotional and mental time? I'm definitely not going to do any convincing by being a pain in the ass, fucking scorekeeping, like, oh, how many bowls of rice did you have today? Like, who the hell wants to live with somebody doing that to them? You know, definitely not me. And I don't want to be that guy. And I become that guy when I get scared. I'm acting out of fear. You know? And I get scared, to be honest. And it's not scared that something bad is going to happen. I'm scared because I know something bad can happen. That's worry, the other thing. But I get scared because I know, brother, I could lose my wife. And she's everything to me on this earth. I don't know what goes on beyond this earth, but on this earth, she is everything to me. And there is not one person that knows me that does not know that. And that's the truth. So when I have her in the hospital, I don't have her there, but, you know, similar to the other situation, I like to be around if I can. But I also know I need to also take care of myself. Otherwise, it's like a dance. It's like a waltz. It's a delicate balance, because if I just do only hospital, and do nothing else, guess what? Brother, I am showing up there and they might not let me come back. But there's also situations where you need to really advocate for yourself. That's the only word that I know how to use. Because, like, you know, maybe I'm prejudiced because some of the doctors and the nurses and whatever, they're young. When I'm, again, 45, they're in their 30s, some of them, in their late 20s. And they talk to you like you have not lived. And just because they went to medical school and they work in a hospital doesn't mean that my ideas are fucking bad. It doesn't mean that. And there was one instance where I really had to, because my wife is also, number one, she's a very, and I don't know, people like angelic. My wife is not delicate, but she's angelic. She's a lady. So she's soft-spoken. She doesn't really yell. She'll go 0. When she goes to 100, let me tell you, she'll pull all those cords out of her body and walk out the hospital. Or she will pull the pepper spray out and spray a motherfucker or cut somebody. So she has that, or she has quiet. She doesn't have really too much in between. She has like a little bit, like it revs up a little bit. She has like first gear. She has first gear and overdrive. So she's idling and she's chilling and she's just being her normal, lovely, beautiful self. There's not one, I don't know who would tell me the truth, but there's not one person I know that has met her that didn't like her. Because she's warm and she's soft. So, but I am a rough, you know, spoiled little boy. So, you know, and I'm an alcoholic, which means I like to stomp my feet and I like to matter and I like to be right. So it's a hard balance. And there's one lady, man, she was giving me a run for my money. And I just didn't understand. I was like, even my wife was like, bro, what's up with this fucking lady? I'll break it down for you a little bit. And then, yeah, and then maybe you'll understand what I mean. So, you know, they're like saying, okay, the walls on my wife's, I guess the arteries or the vessels, whatever, the veins, the vessels, whatever's clogged up. I don't know the right term. Don't fuck with me. The walls are inflamed because of her lupus. So they could not do the bypass surgery because the walls are inflamed. And if the walls are inflamed there and they get a nerve or get a vein from her leg or one from her arm and attach it to something that's inflamed, the likelihood of it holding is not the same as if it's not inflamed. Right? So, what do they want to do? They want to send her home for 3 months to get inflammation under control before they will do a surgery. Which is kind of good news, except you're sending somebody home with an 80% fucking blockage, you know, which I've come to find out is not maybe the absolute worst thing, but It'll be tense. Anyway, so this young doctor is in there. And, like, the problem was in the hospital was that, like, one of the head nurses or whatever would come and tell us, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the plan. And then literally 5 minutes later, somebody else would come and be like, the plan changed. We're going to do this. And then 5 minutes later, somebody else came and said, no, this is the new plan. So we didn't know if she could eat, if she could not eat. And when I mean 5 minutes, I mean sometimes it was less than 5 minutes, but 5 minutes would be the most. So we heard 3 different things in 5 minutes. And this lady just happened to be the last one. And I said, listen, let me explain to you what the problem is. The problem is that we are getting conflicting information from people within a 15-minute span. And we're not even having enough time to process what the first or second person says. And then now there's somebody else saying something else. So the way that you guys are, I'm going to put an air quote, doing business is freaking horrible. It's like, yeah, it's a team of people and we're all working together. I said, no. I get that you're all working together, but you need to work together outside of the room, and one person needs to come in and deliver information. Otherwise, we don't make any decisions, because we don't make decisions like that, because you guys are making it uncomfortable for us to make these kind of decisions. So this lady is saying, like, listen, we have to give you these steroids in order to slow down the inflammation. But the surgeon, he wants to do these other tests, right? But this other test to check the blood flow through those veins or whatever, arteries, to check the blood flow, to measure it. So that way we have a measuring stick, and then we can check again in 3 months to see if it got better. But the truth is that test is not available until Monday. So we want to, instead of doing that, give you a stress test, which is getting on the treadmill, doing whatever. So that way we can give you we'll get a different kind of reading, but we'll be able to give you a steroid. And then we can start that stuff. And I said, okay. I said, but why? I said, is it possible? I said, and that's when I was like, listen, it sounds crazy. I said, but because if you do the steroids and then the main test that the surgeon wants to do, I forgot the name of it. I think it's called PET or PAT or something like that. PAT, whatever. The steroids won't give you a good readout on the blood flow because she'll be on fucking steroids. So, and that's that was the first, measuring stick they wanted to use. So then I told him, I said, why don't you, she said, yeah, but then but we want to give her the steroids today. I said, can you ask them if they can delay giving the steroids until Monday, just so we can have this test first, and then you can give her the steroids. That's a logical question, right? She was fucking like refusing to even ask that. Ask the rheumatology department, ask the other department if that's possible. She stood there for like 10 minutes just talking over me, like, no, this other test is good. And she's like thinking that if she talks faster, that I'm just going to comply. And she's like talking to, I said, I'm not saying that we won't do the stress test, but what I'm saying is that if this other test is a better test, and then as I'm in the middle of that, she's like, no, but it's still the same test, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I was like, what's wrong with you? I literally asked her, I said, I'm sorry. What's wrong with you? What is stopping you from going and just asking this question? I said, and this is what I said to her, I said, do you just want compliance? Is that what you want? That nobody can question you? I said, just go and ask. She's like, nothing's stopping me. I said, but you're still fucking standing next to me. You're still standing next to me, talking over me, trying to beat me into submission. Go and fucking ask. Leave me and my wife alone so we can discuss this thing. And she was like having a mental malfunction in front of me. Like nobody's allowed to ask her something. Nobody. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's allowed. She's like, because she went to school and she's a doctor, whatever her ego problem was, it was fucking insane. Insane. And I was happy because it was in front of my wife, because my wife knows that, like, you know, I can be a little bit abrasive. But she was like, dude, this lady's fucking crazy. Like, she just won't accept no for an answer. Like, and we're not even saying no. We're just saying, is it possible that we can get the better test on Monday? She's like, well, then you'll be sitting here and doing nothing for 2 days. Well, I'm not asking about, so what? Who cares? If we're in a safe space, we're in the cardiac ICU. If we sat here for 2 days to wait so that way we can get the proper exam that can help the surgeon, because that's the one that he wants. What do you mean? We'll wait. So what? You know, we're talking about somebody's life here. And she wouldn't fucking go do it. And it's fine. I said, dude, just go and ask. And it took like 4 whole minutes of arguing back and forth with the lady, because especially she got offended even more just because I was questioning her. And I wasn't questioning her. I was just asking if we can maybe find some kind of middle ground, because she just has one thing. She's like, well, you know what? The stress test can only be done by 4 o'clock. Well, I'm like, okay, well, it's 3 o'clock. So what? You know, and they need an answer now because they have to do the scheduling thing and this and that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. I said, but we want to have the best care. I don't care about this, you know. We're allowed to ask. That's the whole thing. Nobody's allowed to question some of the people who work in these places. It's like a public school teacher. They're in the same fucking boat. Nobody's allowed to ask them anything. Same thing with police. You can't ask them anything. All these people, like, they walk the earth and they have this power trip. And because they have this, she could just be right. And that's okay. I'm okay with being wrong. But I had a suggestion that was outside of what she was saying. She could have just lied and been like, we asked them and they said no. I've been like, okay. But then she would have been on the fucking hook. You know? And then, right? So she finally, I get her to fucking just leave us alone. Right? And to have an argument with a doctor in front of your wife who's in cardiac problem, it's not easy, but bro, I was willing to be wrong. I didn't mind. But the fact that she wouldn't even consider the fact that she was wrong, I should get her name and report her wherever. She is going to be a horrible fucking doctor. And she is going to kill motherfuckers with her fucking ego. And it'll never be her fault. And I know medicine is not, that's not the way it works. It's just, it's not an exact thing. Everyone's doing the best they can. But part of that means fucking humility. And this is like a young person. She looked like maybe she was like 28, 29 years old. And I looked at my wife after she left. I was like, oh my God. I was like, dude, I feel bad for her boyfriend or whoever she's with. And my wife's like, she can't have anybody with that attitude. I said, that's the problem. She needs to be dicked down, you know? So then she comes prancing back in with, she's like, oh, the main cardiologist, the main guy is here, the surgeon, the main, you know, and he comes in, right? I'm not going to say age appropriate. I don't know how old he was. Maybe he was 40, maybe early 40s, whatever, but experience appropriate. He's like, how you guys doing? I'm going to speak very candidly with you guys, and we're just going to start at the beginning. And he breaks down everything nice and slow, just like the Indian doctor did when he found that thing. Dude, this guy stopped everybody, and he just went to the printer, and he pulled out a piece of paper, and he's like, Jared, Emily, this is a serious situation, but I'm going to draw you a diagram so that way you know exactly what's going on. And all the other nurses, they loved that guy. It was funny. This one Puerto Rican lady was like, the Indian doctor, he's good, you know? And he was good. And he was good in the way that he communicated with us and made us feel comfortable. And also he was on the same plane as me, which is that, like, we're all going to do our best. Anything could happen. We've been doing this a long time, but you know, anything can happen. It means all the good can happen, and it means some wrong can happen, you know? Anyway, this guy comes with the same energy, almost like he was stoned. And he shows us the actual picture of my wife's heart, where you can see those things that are inflamed and whatever. He's like, we want to lower this inflammation and this and that and whatever before we can do this surgery, because if we're going to do this thing, we want it to be done right. We want it to be done once, you know, so we're going to try this exam, but I cannot give the exam till Monday. So he says very simply, he says, look, I'm an expert in this field, in heart surgery. He says there's a lot of people involved in this because of your lupus. So the rheumatology department is involved. I spoke with 7 other people before I walked into this room, and I saw this one thing on the image, which is why I asked these other questions, and they believe we're on the right path. This is why you're not getting the surgery right now. And I was like, all right, cool. And he's like, but I have to tell you that we're going to ask. He says, I really want this one exam that can't happen until Monday. So I'm going to ask the rheumatology department if we can just not put you on the steroids until then, until after we do this exam, because that's the best option, right? And I was like, I looked at my wife and my heart was fucking singing. I was like, you see, that is an idea that, and I didn't have to say anything, but we just looked and we were like, absolutely, we agree. Because that was the fucking thing I wanted to fucking do, that this bitch was saying, no, you better commit right now to taking this shit and going to do, we're going to take you down for the stress test right now. Like, she was just like so controlling and bossy. And this motherfucker was her boss. And she melted away into a corner in the room. And then she interrupted. It's funny because this lady has very poor self-control. So she's the one coordinating with the people, the rheumatology department and the stress test people. And then, like, she tells him, well, she like tries to butt in because she needs to matter. And she says, well, the stress test people saying it has to happen by 4. And he very cavalier looked at her. He says, listen, anything is possible. Don't you worry. Like, he's trying to tell her, shut the fuck up. Like, relax. Like, you're very green and I am fucking brown. So just relax. So he's going over the stuff with us and we're confident. And he's also very humble because he says, look, this is my specialty. I do this thing. I do it every day. And here we are. You're in the right place and you have the right guy. But I am not going to speculate on what the other departments, I stick to what I know. If they say that if the rheumatology department comes and says, no, you need these steroids right now because the inflammation is way out of control and it's too high and we need to take it. So it's on them. It's not on me. But I'm going to ask them, to if we can have this time. And then the stupid girl butts in again with some other comment. She's like, oh, I'm in a group chat. I guess they're all in the kind of like a group chat together. All the doctors are talking about this case. And she sees it and she's like, see, the rheumatology department is coming and blah, 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 blah. And he looked at her and he said to her, that's not a question for a fellow to be asking. Basically, and I was like, oh, that's like, she's not like somebody in charge. I guess we found out what an actual fellow is. It's like somebody who finished their residency. Yes, they are a doctor, but they're spending extra time studying, an area of expertise that they want to do. So she's fucking green, which is why she's behaving the way she is. Super inexperienced. And he like sunned her in front of us. Like, that's not a question for somebody in your position to be asking these other people. So just please. And then he kind of like very, I'm sure he gave her some kind of tongue lashing later, hopefully. If not, just his attitude, hopefully her attitude changes. And I was happy that I was there because I don't know if my wife would have been as rough as I was to shut that lady up. I don't know. She might have just said, okay. And I was happy that we were right because we're willing to be wrong. And that's what this whole life is about. Are we willing to be wrong? And when somebody's not willing to be wrong, brother, I am uncomfortable. I don't want them around me. And luckily, the rheumatology department came. There was 4 people. They were a little bit young too, but they all had great experience. A lot of listening, one person talking. And they said, no, we can wait till Monday to give these steroids so that way you can do this thing. And we're going to start on this level and this. And then they asked us a little bit about, they had experience. You can't put 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag. And that's the whole thing, But I know what it's like, man. I told my wife, I said, it's like having a carpet cleaner. Like, when I'm training somebody and they see something that they're like, oh, I know what that is. I can get that out. And they have no idea. And I'm like, my friend, you need to just relax. Let me show you something, And so I know what it's like. Again, this girl, I'm sure she knows a lot more than me about a lot of things, but I know what ego looks like. And it wasn't a 911 situation, and I know what inexperience looks like, and I know, what all of that looks like because I remember myself being like that. And I'm sure everybody is like that at some point in their life. So moral of the story is, like, know who you are, know who you're dealing with, and, and just have, there's the one thing that I learned today, actually. And it's good because this is what I have to work on. There's this guy. I heard it on the speaker tape. He's talking about, people have faith, right? And I say, okay, have faith. He's talking about the difference between having faith in God and trusting God. It's not the same thing, apparently. So, and this is what I'm going to be holding on to for a while. And this is what I'm trying to work towards. I work towards it a lot in in a lot of areas of my life. Some areas I don't have trust. I just have a lot of faith. And this is the way he broke it down. And maybe this can be helpful to some of you guys. It was very helpful to me. He said, if you're at the circus and there's a guy doing the high wire act, right? Walking across a high wire, right? Then he brings out like a wheelbarrow and he's doing walking the wheelbarrow across the high wire. Faith is you being like, yo, this guy does this every day. It's still amazing, but wow, I have faith that this guy knows what he's doing. Trust is you climbing up there and getting in the wheelbarrow. And that's the difference. Do I trust that God is the greatest? And that I'm going to be okay no matter what. And that I'm already okay. I think about that. It's and it's a very practical way to look at it. Because, I don't want to be here without my wife. I know that I told her, and I've said this before, I'm okay with me leaving this earth. I've had an amazing life. You know, I'm not looking for death, but if it came, I'm a satisfied customer, man. I've had such a wonderful experience. The most impactful has been me meeting my wife and my love for her helping me change into the person that I am today, because I needed that in order to keep her, in order to get her. I mean, I got her ass in a boat, but she was flopping out like a fucking fish. You know what I mean? And, yeah. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be who I am right now. And just to even have experienced that is overwhelming for me in the most incredible emotional way. So I would be okay if they shut the lights off for me. I mean, I said that in front of her once, and she was like, "Are you fucking crazy?" I would be devastated if he was gone. And I'm like, okay, that I get. And I would be devastated if she was gone. You know? But it ain't today. Not today. So, take care of yourselves. Love yourselves. Be good to yourselves. Share, subscribe, like on all podcast platforms. And we'll see you guys next week. All right. I love you. Peace.